You feel it. I feel it. We're all feeling it. The sense of being inside something big. Some. It's hard to say whether it's a story. It's more mosaic, a sense of meaningfulness, but not located in any particular place. I mean, the world has changed, right? We've all been feeling it since the election that there's a different kind of, keep saying pattern. There's a different configuration of images and meaning. I'm going to say images and meaning and pattern, and oh, a mosaic, right? That we're in something. It's alive and sometimes looking at us, changing. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it something that we should be rejoicing in? Is it something we should be dreading? How do we arm ourselves against this? How do we submerge ourselves in it? What could it possibly mean? Well, we're here on the Mosaic Ark tonight to take you into the myth. Welcome. So what do you think those drones are, right? I think they're angels, right? They got eyes, they
Yes.
got
Biblically accurate angels.
the
Yes.
biblically accurate angel drones. So there, we solved it, everyone. Whatever is going on off the coast of New Jersey and somewhere in Germany and such, it's angels popping through into
Yes.
visibility.
We hope we hope it's a good one. If they look like that tree topper, they're not. Well, no, they are, but they're scary looking.
I don't
They're
know what
scary
you're
looking.
talking about. We haven't shown them yet, right? Okay, so just guys,
Sorry.
she's leaping ahead. Is
I
time
am.
linear? The thing that I wish we had right now was Manzi Pat. Well, God, what's his name? Right, the very cute Australian guy who's actually from England who does
I just know him as
Shakespeare
History Bay.
History Bay, History Bay. We have, and I will post it in my Telegram channel again. Because I don't know how to save videos off of Instagram. His wonderful little video about what history is, whether it's linear or whether it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
three-dimensional spider web with the music swelling and the patterns and stuff. He gets it. Whatever we're talking about tonight. He's already there. He's already in it. Yeah. We'll just think about him because he's very handsome. Quite sweet.
He
Quite
is.
sweet young man.
He's very cute.
Young
Yes.
enough to be our son.
Very
Drat.
very young.
Okay, fine. Here is the darkest and deepest secret. Young men are rather nice. Yes, they're cute and sweet and have ambitions. And anyway, but let's not get distracted there. Okay, so those of you who are expecting us to have a guest on tonight, you are permitted to expect that. Casey's sick and we didn't want her coughing on him. No, wait, we're in the internet, so that wouldn't be happening.
We didn't want me coughing at inappropriate times, making him think that I was going.
Yes.
Like I didn't believe what he was saying.
Well, and indeed, when we were rescheduling earlier this week, you weren't sure you'd have a voice. So we're happy you're
That's
here.
true.
And Rob is rescheduled with us for January. So we will have a new year on angels, but we probably need this episode to sort of keep going. This tonight's episode topic theme is a carryover from what I was talking about 2 weeks ago when I was trying to define religion. Right. And I managed to weave along for 2 hours and only get halfway through my notes. And so here we are carrying on with the further notes of what in fact is religion. Except we're doing it from a different direction. It's like, what are myths real? Because I think that's maybe even for me, even framing the question correctly is a challenge, which was some of the point about what I was talking about 2 weeks ago, that when we talk about religion and in the way in which people always get in fights on the internet about, because here we are on the internet talking about something, there's usually a failure to define the term. And so everybody's arguing equivocally, like at cross purposes about a word that they all think, a word they're all using, but that means 8 different things. Talk about spiders and spider webs and everything, right?
Right. It's a one word, many different dictionaries. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, same dictionary, multiple definitions across different time periods. And that so one of the bigger, I'm just going to go serious now because I can't keep it up. One of the bigger things that I've been thinking about is this feeling that we have of all time having been like pancaked into now. Yeah, and that has been, so I've been in, everybody, we're finished, we are now on stanza 99 of 100 of Act 3. We are so stoked. You guys, this is so cool. And the thing is, if you follow us for Draco Alchemicus, which you should be because it's going to be amazing, as we're writing the story and the myth, we're trying to write the love story of God into this kind of allegorical, but not really completely allegorical, but sort of mystical, symbolic, but it's got like masks and carnival and spells and propaganda and McLuhan insights and stuff. It's all going into this poem. As we're researching it, but one, we keep having the completely wild and terrifying things happening. It's like we'll write something one day and it will happen the next.
Yeah. Yeah, that has happened
a lot. Right.
Yeah.
And
really
what's been interesting about this last act, where it's modernity converging on the present, right? Like the moment, the now. The previous act, which we've got the illustrations going on for, is set more in the past. Right? It's the backstory. It's the court, so it's the backstory act. And as we were writing that, we could feel things happening, and it was cool seeing the patterns and things like that. But it didn't feel like we were scripting reality.
Yeah.
As we've been writing Act 3 and we're in the present, and it's gone from like early 20th century to now in the digital. So, sort of it shifts over the course of the act, and we're in the digital now, and we will write something and it will happen the next day. We're a little spooked by this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, this act, I can see why people can think time is a pancake, because it seems to all get, well, some people think it's compressed together, but to me, it looks the opposite. It looks like all of time is here and it went, out like that, like the spider web. Like you said, you can actually see everything, connected. I sound like a conspiracy theorist now.
Well, this is the thing is, that's what I've been thinking. It's like we're in this moment, the moment, right? The moment now. One, the internet is this. On the one hand, it's this perpetual now, right? There's on the internet, there's only now, and the current thing. The feeling's like, oh, and now we switch, and now, and switch, and now, and switch, and now, and switch, right? And you're just, wow. You're
right. And AI is trying to anticipate the future too. That's what's really interesting, but it can't achieve it, but it's trying to anticipate it.
Yeah, but it's trapped, right? It's trapped in the perpetual now, just like everything else.
Yes.
So the now, as we talked about with Mark Stallman a few weeks ago, and as we've talked about in our McLuhan study, the now in the internet is all everything, because the internet has been fed by way of all the scanning projects from the libraries, and they're extensive, right? If you guys don't read Latin,
Yes.
I don't know why you don't. I mean, there's Learn Latin out there. He's got a huge following on X. You will not maybe appreciate the amazingness of having the libraries of early modern Europe all scanned, which is
And it's
right,
crazy.
16th,
Yeah, I
17th,
know.
18th century. Latin was still the main language of publication. And all of those early books, or early modern books, are scanned and available through Google Books as PDFs. Right. And then there's all of this, the early English books online, and all the libraries have been, working with Google for decades now to scan everything and put it in the internet. And so it's like literally the literal is all now instantly all available. And, I guess the better the AI gets, the more it will be able to translate all of that stuff. But it's not terrifically good at that yet, right? If you feed a whole book.
Well, what's wonderful about the whole scanning thing is that it's not just libraries that can do it. Anybody can do it. Right? If they come across an old book, they can scan it. But some guy's got this. It's I think it's. I have to go look at Telegram later. Like Irish Books or something like that. But he just finds these really old books, scans them in, and loads them up onto Telegram.
There they are
as a PDF.
Yeah.
And I said some to Mel because she's been wanting to learn Gaelic, Irish Gaelic first, and then Scottish Gaelic. And these were poems. These were poems that had been collected in the 17th century. Irish poems.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So the now, right? And that I've been talking about this, and it does bear reiterating, because otherwise, it's like people are not going to notice. It's as long as you in academia, for example, stay focused on your particular specialty field, you'll be thinking, oh, this is cool. There's all this stuff up about my field. But it's like there's stuff about every field. And when I say we're all in the now, we can know more now about all of human history than ever before in human history right now. Right. It's the biggest book and the biggest index in the world. Yes.
Because you can follow the source of everything.
All of it.
It's all linked. And it's incredible.
And it's certainly, that's why, in some ways the AI seems like an answer to a problem, because no human mind can search all of that. Right. So, AI is a massive search engine. It's a giant index for finding all of these previous scripted things, writings, right? And images, and all of the now. Okay, so we're that, right? Do we have that pancake feeling? But the thing is, I think you're right, and this is we've gone through this in writing Draco Chemicus. That the first thing they go through is a wheel, which is flat, right? That's at the end of Act 1. And then in Act 2, they're all going for a crystal ball. So there's a 3-dimensional thing. Yeah. And then I think in Act 4, we've gone through 4 dimensions. Or Act 3, we've gone through 4 dimensions. It's in time and in this, the screen world that they're finding themselves
like the
in.
Internet.
Yeah, that we're trying to make it like the internet. I think some of this, the effect for me is since I joined Substack and I'm trying to find out what's going on there and what people are talking about, I was somewhat aware of some of the conversation going on there, but I'm picking up more pieces of it now. And of course, one is interesting. There's a lot of all the same conversation, which happens because people get linked to things that they like, right? And so you feel the sort of reinforcement of things. But at least on Substack, there's this, humming along conversation all about like what kind of new reality are we in? And the one thing about this reality is it's all now. It's the all time is somehow accessible now. But the problem is it has no depth, right? When I say it's pancaked, I mean it's flat, right? It's like a plane.
What do you mean by no depth?
Well, that's okay. So that's been an interesting feeling for me, realizing I used to have. It's like you can remember everything all at once now. And some of the stuff I talked earlier this week with the guys, Kenaz and Anaf, that one of the sort of problems is keeping chronology straight anymore. Like if it's all available all the time, what does it mean to have something coming before or after something else? Like when you have.
Well, that was That was the history bay guy, right? I gotta
Yeah.
come up with a more respectful name from
You
that.
do have to,
But
it's, his first name's
I know I need
Patrick,
to
I
find a.
think.
Oh, Patrick. Okay, we'll call him Patrick. Perfect. So Patrick's Instagram video, when he was talking about the spider web, he said people think history is boring because they think it's this happened, then that happened, then that happened, then that happened. It's not
Right.
everything comes in a straight chronological line. He said it's not like that. It's like this and this and this and this. And he's right. They're all connected.
Right.
It's like, the day the universe changed is every moment of every day. Something happened that affected something else.
Right.
And they're all connected.
Yes, and
Yeah.
he actually describes, I mean, very succinctly in a minute, very well, that one of the things in writing history and studying history is you find, as the now changes, the way we tell the story about what happened previously changes, and there's a McLuhan level to it of the media changes, right? But there's also simply, as we see events play out, you understand better the effects of the previous events because you've
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
You have an oh moment. Oh, okay, I get it now.
right. And that one of the things that's happening right now is it feels like it's, it's not 2016 all over again in the sense of Trump, is elected and stuff, but it's more the meme about saying, we had this first the New Hope, and then the Empire Strikes Back, and now the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
That
Right.
when you're in the Empire Strikes Back, you don't really know what the full story is. But now we feel like, oh, there's now, the Return of the Jedi. Now we get the fullness of the story, and it changes everything that happened before. Instead of being in eternal despair because the Empire is winning, right? It changes what you think that portion of the story means, and so. I do feel, I think some of it is a more local thing. Is I feel like, and it was in one of the songs that Fox wrote, the 4 More Years song, right? It's like they stole 4 precious years. It's like, well, they stole 8, right? There was something between 2016 and 2024. It's like a vacuum now.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. The destructive machine was turning
Right.
in 2016 for sure. Everybody saw it in real time, and it was. Well, some people laughed at it. Some people were rightly horrified by it. Maybe a bit of both. But you're right. It's 8 years, not 4.
Right. But it's like, how long ago was 8 years? And doesn't 2020 feel longer ago than 2016?
It feels like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It feels like 10 years.
So I'd say there's this phenomenon, the temporal phenomenon, there's the knowledge phenomenon, and everyone sitting in this feeling something enormous has shifted. And
True.
There's a lot of discussion right now about like, okay, meaning and myth and reenchantment and wanting to something. There's a something, right? There's this something that's happening, and what it's surreal for me. One, I think it's we're in our writing process, getting to the end of Act 3 on something that we started 3 years ago, 2021. Yeah, 3. We started 3 years ago. So finishing Act 3 in 3 years is pretty. This is intense poetry, you guys.
They're intense images that we're producing.
Yeah.
With the lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we give them to an artist to draw, and they get even more intense.
I know. Yeah, they're very good at what they do.
Yeah. So it's like we are in Draco Alchemicus and the Dragon Common. We're generally working towards this reframing of meaning in some way, and then everybody else is doing it, and okay, that's our problem. That's what I mean. That's in the ad for today. It was like feeling ourselves inside this globe, and it's like you're in the snow globe, right? What's gonna?
Are we trying to get out?
I'm not sure, right? It's like, are we in the snow globe, or are we, or it's like we're seeing ourselves? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So we need to figure out how to do this, right?
Yeah, I think most people look at the world, at least occasionally, especially over the last 4 years or 8 years, and go, what's going on here? I don't get it. What you try to do through poetry is try to understand it. Not give it meaning. It's already got meaning. You have to find it. You're going to have to pull it out and understand it that way. I think that's the only way you could understand it.
Well, see, you're making a huge assumption there, because there guys are fighting me on Substack already. Everybody fights everybody always, right? It's
what are they fighting about?
Whether there's such a thing as meaning, right? I did a post that my Substack is collecting things.
If there were no such thing as meaning, they wouldn't be fighting.
Oh, very good. Well, okay, so my Substack, guys, princeybarrettprayer.substack. I for the past, I realized I was coming in the middle of a conversation from a conversation I've been having in lots of other places myself, right? And I started trying to introduce myself and something. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And then I realized I had various orphaned posts from various places that I've reposted because they were not all on Fincy Barrett Prayer, my blog. They were other efforts at starting new conversations that didn't go anywhere. Plus a piece on the Notre Dame fire that got posted originally on Catholic Herald and then vanished on me. So I reposted that.
Oh.
Yeah, they took it down. I think they had it just in their letters or something, and they took it down.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but today's post was, again, it's like 10 years old. These posts, and they feel topical now. Talk about collapsing of time.
They're very topical.
Yeah?
They were. Well, I mean, Notre Dame just opened back up.
Well, that one,
right?
yeah. But the posts like on, Credo, it's like, Getty Medieval, and this one,
Oh,
Thank
right.
God for Sin. All of those I wrote like 10 years ago, and they feel like I feel like in this, I can speak that stuff now. It's like, guys, I have been doing this for so long, and you finally caught up. Yes.
Finally caught up. The world finally
The
caught
world
up with you.
finally caught up with me, so I don't sound insane all the time. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. I mean, it's so this sense of like when did it all start and how long have we actually already been in this? One of the posts I read today on Substack was saying it's like we've actually been living in this reality for about 50 years. I'm like, that makes, that fits with my, I'm 60, almost 60, right? But as McLuhan would point out, the effects of the new media are felt before the new media comes into its fullness, which is wild. And to a certain extent, are becoming aware of the phenomenon is long after the fact, right? Like people with the printing press did not get what was going on for the first 50 years of the printing press. They only really started understanding how their world had changed sometime after that.
When you say they didn't understand about the printing press, were you talking about the people who actually read books or the people who generally didn't?
It doesn't matter. I mean, as McLuhan points out, the new media changes the world. So this is, I think, with the internet stuff, people are very distressed, and they were very distressed when Trump, who was clearly ahead of the curve on everything, was using Twitter in 2016. Now, the way he uses it, everybody's just like more, it's not just people are habituated to it, it's they're
used to scripted comments, and his come off as not scripted at all. I'm not sure that's true.
They're totally scripted.
But,
his tweets are completely scripted.
Right. But they come off as unscripted, and he's also playing to type, the typecast.
Oh, yeah.
That he was put in
right.
in the script. Right. But it's a completely different way of a politician communicating, for sure.
Right. And he picked up on the possibility of the media long before anybody else did. And so they were like alarmed.
Oh, yeah, I did.
There was a great little video. I shared this one on my X today. All of this is going to be references out from this particular conversation to all of our other social media tonight. You realize I'm on Telegram, I'm on X, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Substack, I'm on Gab, mainly just to advertise stuff. Social Galactic, if you guys are on Unauthorized. Where else am I? I'm accidentally on Instagram via Facebook, but also there was a Fincy Bear Instagram that Fincy Bear herself used to put stuff up. The bear posts.
Oh, right.
That we are, we're referencing people that we see on the internet and stuff like that. This whole living phenomenon is happening, and whether you find it terrifying or exhilarating is a challenge. There is a weave in here. That this post from 2013 that I wrote about Thank God for Sin, and a number of people quite rightly said, Felix culpa, right? It's like the one, it's freedom. We sin, that means God hasn't made us as robots. We're not robots.
Right. We're not slaves. Right.
We breathe and make mistakes, right? So there you go, not robots. And somebody in the Substack responded, God doesn't exist. And I'm like, And you right, and that's what I was saying about the argument. It's like the internet
Yeah,
exists as
God
this.
doesn't exist. Yeah, prove to me that you exist, and then we'll talk.
Okay, so this is the problem. That sort of, in what sense do we think of a proof? Perfect, right?
Right.
What is the proof of reality? That's what we're actually talking about tonight.
Yeah. A light topic. Just a light topic for a Friday.
Hey, I prepped you for this. We got slides and everything. Okay, so that, but that's the thing, right? It's like, I mean, one, okay, Casey's been very patient with me for 4 years now, saying doesn't scan, right?
Or maybe I'm just pushy and bossy.
Well, your poetry has gotten a lot better in the last 4 years, and we were doing this, right? It's like my sort of weird kind of, just like Trump. I'm just like Trump because I voted for him the first time. Where's my hat? Right. I'm not going to squish my hair. Here, look, I've got the 2016 hat, right?
Oh, great.
That we started with the poetry in the midst of the COVID nonsense. And I started with all of this, kind of put together the pieces of both the media and the experience and the knowledge and the patterns. And I mean, if this phenomenon is 50 years old, I was making collages out of 17 magazines when I was 10. Okay, so right, this sort of feeling of trying to put out.
Was it Sean Cassidy?
Sorry. He wasn't in 17. He was in Teen Beat or Tiger Beat.
Tiger Beat. Yeah, that's true.
How did you know? Did I tell you?
How did you know?
Oh! Right. So we've been in it all this time, and the poetry is a big clue, right? Of what's been going on. I'm losing my track now again.
Sorry.
Yes. No. But
I keep doing that.
Okay. One.
It's all part of the mosaic.
It's all part of the mosaic. And the degree to which it, okay, go back to whether it feels terrifying or exhilarating, whether proof of reality, right? And that is actually enormously significant, right? What's real? I would say in our ad for tonight, we're in the globe, right? It's like, are we in it's a matrix option, right? Are we in this, a simulation, as everyone loves saying? Are those drones out, in New Jersey just simulations and we shouldn't really worry about them because of that? Is there such a thing as reality that we are participating in, or is it all, a giant illusion? Consciousness is simply emergent from our somethings, and none of it's actually real. I mean, we're in a crisis of that level of metaphysics.
Right. This is an old question. You'll probably remember. I'm sure you will. Are we just living in a dream in the mind of God, right? Or do we actually exist?
That is, as well. But the sort of the sense of people are anxious about the internet because they're anxious that it's sucking everybody in. They're anxious that
it can be a huge time waster if you don't use it correctly.
It's all now, right? It's like you can, and I realize I need my fix of look at one thing, follow another thing, look at one thing, follow another thing, look at one thing, follow, right?
How different is that from opening up a newspaper every morning with breakfast?
Well, indeed. Is it significantly different? I mean, I think it is. McLuhan would say the newspaper stuff does a similar sort of thing of leading you through all of these other places.
And you pointed this out before too, the way it's laid out, right?
Yeah.
It's like picture here, headline here, big headline here, a small one here, go to the back page and it's continued on page 24 and you flip through and you stop and you see something there. Right. But it happens a lot slower. It's something physiological that happens with the flashing lights in your eyes and it's right in your brain. It's a different function. I couldn't tell you what it is, just know that it is. Well,
so Mark Stallman would say the newspaper it's paper and it's printed with ink. And so that in McLuhan effects, that's going to create a different kind of environment.
Oh, it is a different environment for sure. Yeah. It's a slower one.
Yes. I mean, one of the things, the light speed level of stuff on the internet is important. But the people are incredibly anxious about the sort of the effect of being online a lot.
Mhm.
And the thing that sparked me off thinking about what we were going to talk about tonight, the conversations that are going on around the OnlyFans woman who did all of the
Oh,
did the
poor sad woman.
yeah did the challenge to have it's 101 men to have sex with 101 men in 24 hours, and then
Yeah,
had it and then did it with a documentary camera to document the experience of showing herself having sex with 101 men online.
yeah.
Which
Yeah.
most I mean, I don't know. I most people are going, this is horrific. Right?
It is horrific. It's horrific for her.
Yeah.
I mean, it's for the men. It's horrific for a whole different reason. But you know, oh, I can't put into words how difficult that must be for her to have put herself through that, because you could just see the regret all over her face when she was being interviewed afterwards.
She's going to do
And
it
it was just,
again.
I know,
She
and
says with 1,000
she's going to
men.
keep repeating it until doesn't feel bad. And that's the lies. That it's never going to not feel bad. This is the same. This is the same phenomena when rape victims, sometimes not all of them, will become promiscuous because they keep repeating the thing that made them feel horrible, trying to gain power over it. This thing that has had power over them.
So I
Right?
have seen that as part of the explanation that she said she used to think that sex would be special, and then when she had sex it wasn't, and so now it's not special. And the clue there being that something happened to her the first time,
Yeah.
and that therefore she
Right.
can't escape that.
And what she's missing is that no matter what happened to her, or what she's done, or what she will do, she herself is still special. Every individual human being is special to God, every single one of them. And that's what people miss. And that's what's so incredibly sad.
Right, but she's not. I mean, okay, so I understand there have been positive responses. I mean, things. Oh yes, she hopes she. I mean, it's the usual feminism claim of, oh, you should be able to have as much sex as you want.
Right. This is doomy feminism, and
Yeah,
it does no good for any woman. It's just physiologically, psychologically, spiritually, it's just not good for you.
I'm not sure it's good for
It's
the men either.
No, it's not. But for the men, it's different. It's because we are different. Physically, we're different.
Right.
And emotionally, we're different. So yes, it hurts them. It hurts them in a different way than it hurts her. So.
Well, I read a very interesting meditation this morning on what we think is going on here, but to get there, we need to take a little bit of a detour. So we're going to go to our stories here. Okay, so the what is reality, and where it's like, where are we in the meaning making? And one of the places that people constantly are going to is we need to re-enchant things, right? And that it ends up in Tolkien world quite frequently, but the sort of the usual way on the internet of suggesting that this should happen is usually by way of Joseph Campbell.
I have a question.
Okay.
What do you really think of Joseph?
Oh, well, yeah. I'm gonna tell you. So the one that people always are talking about, it's like constantly the hero's journey, right? I did read a very nice post today that was recommended via Social Galactic about how women do not go on the hero's journey. Yes, I couldn't agree more. We don't, but neither do the men. I mean, it's fascinating that Campbell's version of what the truth should be has become so sort of real for people. Talking about reality, right? It's like
That's a perfect way to put it. Campbell's vision of what the truth should be, not what
oh
it is.
yeah
What it should
yeah
be, according
so
to him.
so everybody loves to think that Campbell's version of things is this happy inclusive thing, right? It's like here we are with the hero with 1,000 faces premise, right? Is there's the hero's journey, right? There's lots of stories in the world, stories, narratives from all different cultures and so forth. And in all of them, you can find this structure of the hero undergoing his trials and meeting, wise characters that give him advice, and, death and resurrection, returns to the village and takes care of things, right? And that it, it's going to be a healing thing for men in this version of the story to go through this hero's journey, because that's how you gain strength and I'm sorry, I'm going to belittle it because Joseph Campbell is not a good guide. You guys, stop it. All right. And but the central thing that I think people are constantly focusing on, it's like, okay, how are we going to pick between the stories, right? I don't want to have to pick Christ over Muhammad, over Moses, over Krishna, over Confucius, over Gautama Buddha, over the turquoise woman, over, let me see, I've read a lot of myths in my life, right? And so had Campbell. And with the Greek myths and stuff like that, the premise that he was working with is like, hey, all of these can't be true, but something must be true. Or maybe they actually are all true if we can just find how they're all the same. Which sounds great, right? That he's going to give us a way to think about the truth of all of our traditions in this one great, as he said, monomyth. Monomyth. You want to hear what he really thought about Christianity?
Yeah.
So the reference for people who want to follow along, this is from a post that I did in April 2019. April 21st, 2019. Bad things happened in April 2019. Notre Dame caught fire. And then there was a massacre. You remember this one? A massacre of over 200 people in Sri Lanka in a church. Bomb 3 hotels and 3 churches from bombs. And wow. The picture here is from one of the churches. The Christ image is splashed with blood from the people who were killed in the explosions.
Yeah, I do.
So, clearly bigotry is involved, right? And it was Easter Sunday when the bombs went off. Now, in there was a statement by the president of Ireland posted a statement on the attacks. This was President Higgins. On the attacks in Sri Lanka, Sunday, 21st of April, 2019. As president of Ireland, Ireland's supposed to be Catholic, right? Not anymore.
Ireland's not Catholic anymore. There are Catholics in Ireland. It's a distinction.
Felix Ruber saying, "May the best myth win." Well, as president of Ireland, I am sure that people in Ireland will have heard with great concern of the heavy loss of life that has happened at places of worship in Sri Lanka at a time of religious significance. It was Easter Sunday.
Easter. See, this is perfect. This is a perfect representation of the Irish government right now. They want to avoid any mention of Christ, any mention of Christian, any mention of Catholic Church.
These were churches in Sri Lanka, blown up.
No, there were places
on Easter.
There were places of worship.
Places of worship. The right to
places of worship where Easter worshipers had gathered.
Easter worshipers. Remember that phrase, right? And she goes on, the right of freedom of worship is a fundamental right. To the families of those who died and those who have been injured, I send the sympathies and solidarity of the people of Ireland. Christian brothers and sisters? It's like this was Easter Sunday. People died in churches because of bombs. And I was like, I'd say, at my comment, at a time of religious significance when the people were killed in church, perhaps President Higgins had just been searching his iPad on Google and was confused about why the people were in church. Sorry, places of worship. After all, Google, at least in its mobile mode, didn't seem to know. And this is, of course, a huge problem regularly. Like Google decorates its banner with different pictures for every holiday except Easter. Although I did find later that there was an Easter egg and blah, blah, but you wouldn't see it, right? It's like no banner for Easter. because of course we we wouldn't want Easter worshipers. That was the way this stuff was described. The attacks on tourist and Easter worshipers, and it was all over the Twitter, which was still Twitter at that point. Barack Obama, Julian Castro, Dan Kildee, Amy, I don't know who that is, Hillary Clinton, Jared Polis, Greg Stanton, Mayor Brian Bowman, all talked about how saddened they were by the attacks on Easter worshipers, as if they're worshiping Easter.
Right.
It was horrific. It's like, talk about disrespecting the dead.
This is Barack Obama and everybody else who followed him.
Mm-hmm.
He will not mention Christ. He will not stand in a room with a crucifix. It has to be covered or removed. This is him. This is the people who follow him. These are the newspapers. This is the president of Ireland. Nice guy.
Easter worshipers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because of course we know that there's the truth. Well, actually, maybe they've been reading Campbell. I read this.
That's a kind way of putting.
Okay, but the thing is, you guys shouldn't be reading Campbell either, unless you're doing it with a critical eye. This is what
I gotta say. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What? Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I liked Campbell's interviews years ago, and then I mentioned it to you, and you went, "Okay," but anyway, go on. No, I see your point now. Is what I'm trying to say, and hopefully they will too soon.
I read this. So I'm writing this on Easter, right? I read this passage this morning right before going to church. Quote. This is Campbell, guys. The recognition of the secondary nature of the personality of whatever deity is worshipped is characteristic of most of the traditions of the world. The secondary nature of the personality of the deity that's worshipped. Okay, right? Got that? In Christianity, Mohammedanism, and Judaism, however, the personality of the divinity is taught to be final, which makes it comparatively difficult for the members of those communions to understand how one may go beyond the limitations of their own anthropomorphic divinity. I mean, actually, Islam does not have an anthropomorphic divinity, Mr. Campbell.
Yeah, I know.
Neither does Judaism. That's a big difference. They don't have that statue that got covered in blood. For a reason. No anthropomorphic divinity. Anyway, the result, back to Campbell. The result has been, on the one hand, a general obfuscation of the symbols, and on the other, a God-ridden bigotry, such as is unmatched elsewhere in the history of religion.
That's a disgusting phrase.
God-ridden bigotry. That's what Campbell thought about Christianity and Islam and Judaism. Right. But God-ridden bigotry, get it in your head, because this is what Hero of a Thousand Faces guy thinks of Christianity. For a discussion of the possible origin of this aberration, see Sigmund Freud's Moses and Monotheism. Can I be any more angry?
Yeah, louse-ridden, germ-ridden, God-ridden.
God-ridden bigotry.
That phrase is used to describe something disgusting. So, yes, Campbell thinks of Christianity as disgusting.
Mm-hmm. God-ridden bigotry.
That phrase.
It's the God-ridden. So I say, see, it's the God-ridden bigotry of Christians, Muslims, and Jews that makes them incapable of apprehending the wisdom of Campbell's own myth-making, not his tendentious claim to have discovered the one true myth underlying all religious storytelling. I can just keep reading. I'm spitting tacks by now. Campbell pretends throughout The Hero with a Thousand Faces, 1949, simply to have uncovered the, quote, truths disguised for us under the figures of religion and mythology by bringing together a multitude of not too difficult examples and letting the ancient meaning become apparent of itself, end quote. But just like Google and President Higgins, his understanding of religious significance is highly selective. Yes, and that I do try to summarize this.
His acknowledgement of significant religious is, he
should have known better, right? Because his first book was actually a commentary on James Joyce, on Finnegan's Wake, right? He completely got I don't know whether he got the right or wrong answer out of Joyce, but he ends up with this claim that true myth is. Mythology, he says, is psychology misread as biography, history, as cosmology. Me again. Whereas Christians insist that Jesus of Nazareth was not only a historical person, but God become incarnate in history. The psychologist, like Campbell, skilled in the interpretation of dreams, knows better. So, quote Campbell, "We, that is the psychologically trained interpreter, do not particularly care whether Rip Van Winkle, Kamar al-Zaman, or Jesus Christ ever actually lived. Their stories are what concern us, and these stories are so widely distributed over the world, attached to various heroes in various lands, that the question of whether this or that local carrier of the universal theme may or may not have been historical living man can be only of secondary moment." Right?
Yeah, it's not important if he actually existed. Huh?
No. Not in Campbell. He's
the
going for
Campbell.
this sort of psychological stories, right? And if you actually believe anything's true, God-ridden bigotry.
Yeah, it sounds like his entire career was dedicated to telling people just to stop believing in God and start believing in a myth instead. Not saying God is a myth. He's saying, no, there is a myth. And these are all these stories are just part of this larger myth.
It's
You
his
shouldn't
myth,
actually
though. It's the
believe-
one he's discovered, the
Yeah, he
psychological myth
invented
that
it.
he's discovered, this hero of a thousand faces.
You know, I got to say, at least L. Ron Hubbard, you know, had the, I guess, the ethics to start his own religion.
He wrote his
actually
own
call it
myth,
that.
yes.
Yeah, it's this is my religion. This is absolutely true now. But Campbell's doing the same thing here. Right?
Yes.
He's trying to dismiss every religion on earth.
Yes.
While claiming to be above it all.
Yes.
And saying, here on a silver platter, here's the myth.
Yes, I got a picture for that right here. Here he is with his book, so the internet. I have no idea where these other pictures have come from. They were served to me on the internet this week, right? This man with his feet sitting on a book with his feet on books, and this sort of yin yang kind of blue and gold swirl, and in the image, yes, just like Campbell's monomyth, and if you look at the images in the design, they're from all religions, right? So here it is, the sort of magnificence of the all religions.
Yeah.
And Campbell is actually, he's wanting a world religion, right? But he wants things like the good news which the world Redeemer brings, and which so many have been glad to hear, zealous to preach, but reluctant apparently to demonstrate, is that God is love. That he can be and is to be loved, and that all without exception are his children. Who says that? Campbell was Christian. He's just pretending that he isn't, which I find even more reprehensible than his, God-ridden bigotry stuff, right? He's
his entire career is a temper tantrum.
Yes. I mean, he literally grew up Catholic. His parents were missionaries, I think. Or maybe I put that in my own head. He has a missionary claim that comes out of Christianity, which is there's truth, right? And that because human beings have access to the truth, all being made in the image and likeness, they're going to have pieces of it. But the truth through revelation is Christ. Campbell pretends that it's not, right? Oh, we don't really need Jesus Christ. And then, in fact, teaches Christianity. God is love, right? He can be, is to be loved, and without all except. The community today is the planet, not the bounded nation. You see, he's a globalist too, right? In this,
yeah.
Bad nations, good but global. Hence, the patterns of projected aggression which formerly served to coordinate the in-group can now only break it into factions. The national idea with the flag as totem is today an aggrandizer of the nursery ego, not the annihilator of an infantile situation. Nor can the great world religions as at present understood meet the requirement. But I'll fix that, right? For they have become associated with the causes of the factions as instruments of propaganda and self-congratulation. The universal triumph of the secular state. He is writing in 1949, okay, so... the universal triumph of the secular state has thrown all religious organizations into such a definitely secondary and finally ineffectual position that religious pantomime is hardly more than a sanctimonious exercise for Sunday morning.
1949? That's when the United Nations opened in New York, wasn't it?
That's good.
Yeah, he was hired into a women's college during the Depression. And just when FDR was president, and I don't think, I never heard anybody claim that FDR was not a globalist. That the quickest way to do that was Wilson's way, get us into the war.
Right.
Right. And that's what he did. And then the United Nations opened up in New York, all while he's creating his monomyth. Sounds kind of almost planned his career.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, maybe. He's been
Yeah.
fed to us. No wonder everybody thinks that
Mhm.
his hero, the Thousand Faces, answers all the questions, right? It's okay. So now that I'm finished spitting tacks for the moment, um, I it,
You spit them so well. Just keep doing it.
it's so much fun.
I no longer like Campbell, thanks to you.
Good.
No, I would say I had not read his book. I just watched the interviews, and I thought it was interesting because he was talking about myths, and I love discussing myths.
Right.
If I had read that book, I would have been a little confused.
Yeah, most people don't actually read the books. They just get the
No,
yeah,
I never did.
and so you could say if any, the people who are eager to cite Campbell do the same sort of wool pulling, right? It's like it's a bait and switch, typically.
Yeah.
Peterson, so
She's going to spit tax again.
I have to read that book. Oh my gosh, please don't make me.
For your sins.
Oh, not it. I read the Bible for my sins. Come on. So backing off from this tax spitting, Campbell's reading Joyce. Finnegan's Wake is one of our like touchstones, which Mel needs to read for us because she can read it and we can't. We have to catch up with her eventually.
You can understand it.
Something is going on, right? The sort of we were talking earlier about the all time of the internet, right? The now time, the collapsing. Obviously, these guys are sensitive enough in the early 20th century to be picking up on something, right? Campbell could not have. I mean, you can't get through Finnegan's Wake without being affected by this desire to have. I mean, Finnegan's Wake is a monomyth too, right?
I was going to ask, did he know Joyce?
Personally, I don't think so.
Hmm.
No, but I mean, he did write the first commentary on the Wake, right? So
Okay.
that it's interesting about it. I was surprised because I just knew him from the hero and other of his myths discussion. But he's clearly, I mean, he's like the crib notes for the cliff notes for Joyce. And if you really want the monomyth, it's Finnegan's Wake. Which is this mixture of all of the stories into one story, which is still actually Adam and Eve. I mean, the Wake is very much, it's like the fallen story without Christ. That there's a sin that can't be eradicated. There's the sin that HCE has, and the main character, narrator, protagonist that isn't, right? There's some kind of sin that happens in the garden with the women, and you don't know what it is, and you never really know what it is, and there's the family that blends in and out of the different time periods. It's like our Draco Chemics is the baby version of trying to show the way in which this pattern layering happens, and then it gives rise to something, right? And what Marshall McLuhan would say, who is our next great example, right? Marshall McLuhan would point out that here's the scroll, that we are being affected by the media that we're encountering all of these communications in, the stories, right? And that so I can make fun of Campbell, but he is actually clearly picking up on something that was a phenomenon that we're all in still, which is why his work appeals to people now. It seems to be answering this felt problem of significance. Does that make sense?
It does make sense,
Okay.
but and again, I haven't read Campbell's books, but I have to wonder if as I kind of hinted at before already, part of the reason for his philosophy, I guess it would be like a philosophy of myth,
Yes.
was to denigrate religion, to turn people away from it, and so this gives them a handy out.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. They don't need to worry about the God-ridden bigotry
God-ridden bigotry,
of
yeah.
and you can feel. I mean, that has definitely been since 1949, the polite thing to say, spiritual but not religious.
Yes, and I don't think that people that use that expression are necessarily trying to be polite. I think they can feel God. They just don't understand it because they haven't been taught about him. Maybe they grew up in a churchless household, or a marginally Christian household, or a culturally Christian household, and they're not going to. They don't know the word agnostic, and I don't think they are agnostic. I think they sense the presence of God. but they don't understand it. So they're spiritual, they're not religious. It's a pretty accurate statement for a lot of people, I think, because they are feeling that.
Right. I mean, going back to the example that I used to set up it's like the Sri Lankans were there in church worshiping.
Right. Yes. They weren't in a spiritual gathering place. They were in church
right.
during mass on the feast of the resurrection of our Lord.
Right.
That's it. Which is somebody, an Irish politician, even a politician, would have said in those words 50 years ago, but won't now.
So the question, right, and that I've gotten to by way of mocking Campbell, is the it's like I thought of it when you were saying what you were saying. I mean, you say they're spiritual, they sense God, but don't know. Say again what you were saying.
They I think people, they can sense God. They naturally feel their creator, but they don't understand it. They don't understand what that means. I can only think of the pagan Greeks right before they became Christian, right? They understood God existed. They didn't know who he was. And Paul came and preached to them, and then they knew who he was, right? They did their best to try to guess who he was with a pantheon of gods. But this is not a monomyth, but people have been reaching out for God and creating, myths, their own religions, their own understanding of trying to explain that feeling. And Campbell comes along and says, no, don't bother. It's all just one big story.
Well, he says that he's the early 20th century liked the psychological explanations. Right. And I mean, what's interesting about Jung,
replacement.
Well, like Jung with his archetypes. Okay, these guys are all reading a lot of comparative religion in the early 20th century. So good. Jung is also all doing like his own like lion head god sacrificial ritual stuff. So,
was this when he was on mushrooms?
and he had this the reality of the archetypes and what are they? Well, do they exist or not? Can you inherit them? How do people know about them? I mean, this is it's an and obviously one of the things that was happening in the late 19th, early 20th century was thanks to the telegraph, thanks to the radio, thanks to the media that were available, suddenly all the parts of the world were connected. So there's that the Victorian internet phenomenon of everybody being suddenly connected by electricity.
That must have been amazing. That must have been just incredible.
Well, it fueled the modern world in the sense of its insanity, right? And to say we're in the digital now.
Sped it up, maybe.
It's whether the digital is an intensification of that, right? It's just more electric, or whether it's something other. It's qualitatively transform, which Mark Stallman would say, like the digital is not the same as the electric. And the electric obviously is not the same as the printed, even though the new media carry as content the old media. So we're on television right now, but we're in the digital. So it has that different environmental effect on us.
Yeah. Well, it certainly shortens our attention span. I think that's been proven.
Well, but attention span for what, right? And this is where
for understanding depth. Right, depth of a subject.
Okay, you're feeding me great lines tonight. Okay, one, we're worrying about reality, right, and then depth. Okay, so we've been talking here in the Mosaic Ark about McLuhan and the effects of the media and such, and then via a piece that she did on the OnlyFans woman who we'll get to in a minute. I discovered Mary Harrington today. Big shout out on Substack. Subscribe to her and everything. I'm like fangirling massively. And the thing is, I subscribed so I could get this essay, right? The one that this picture comes from, which she called "Scrolling Toward the Divine: Pattern Recognition, Non-Material Places, and the University of the Bleeding Obvious." And she
must be English.
She is. She says. I've lost the date off of this. This was a few weeks ago that she put this one up. She says, on Tuesday at short notice, I found myself on a panel responding to the question, does the future have a church? which fits with our earlier questioning about like worship, right? We discussed, among other things, a recent and to some surprising wave of religious reenchantment. And I argued, this is Harrington, I argued that one of its drivers is the internet. Or, to put it more pithily, scrolling can bring people closer to God. And she means scrolling on the screens, right? But it's the scrolling towards God. I loved it, right? It's like, it's great.
Yeah.
Scrolling towards the divine. Scroll, 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 scroll. And then she goes into in this meditation, and she's been building on it in some other what she done one on woke is not the new Reformation. It's the real Reformation is in the scrolling that we're going through.
Yeah.
That, and this goes back to what you were saying about attention spans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on the one hand, yes, reading a book, which is a printed phenomenon, it's the McLuhan world of the movable type, fixed paper, printed book, people find very hard now. I even find it hard now. And I used to be like a champion, absolute champion reader, right? I could read for 12 hours a day on paper.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, I was also younger. If you guys, I was like, what do I need to do to become a professor? Read a lot.
A lot. And fast. She is very fast reader.
Well, but scrolling is okay. So this is like, how much attention can I spend scrolling? I terrify you because, right, I put stuff up, I scroll it, got it, right?
Yeah, I'm done. Like I'll 3 hours later, I'm still trying to.
And you're
digest.
trying to read through it, and I've gone, yep, got it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, scrolling is interesting because one, as a visual phenomenon, and particularly if you do it on your phone. It's like speed readers are recommended to do this. To keep it spaced right to your eyes, right? The phones are exactly the right width, right? And you can just scan really fast straight down. I did a speed reading class to be able to get through being an assistant professor. And the main thing they taught us was read down the middle of the page, right? Use your fingers and read down the middle of the page. So talking about the phenomenon has already been there. Speed reading was like anticipating the need for scrolling.
Interesting. Yeah. And I love the way they call it a scroll because that's what the first books were written on, right? They opened up, scrolled.
Well, our scroll, these vertical scrolls are different from the scrolls in
the
antiquity.
Chinese would do that,
yeah.
right? So
they but so down like columns are easier to read than big fat chunks. And if on my Substack you read my thing on talking numbers, numbering words, talking numbers, one of the things that Christians did in books, right? You can see it in this book here, this Bible that I have. Notice what happens on the pages. They're in tidy little columns, right? That you can actually read. It's a better reading format than a big wide page, right?
Yeah, it's true because you end up going like this and then you lose your place and you have to, yeah. I can see where it would be easier. Yeah.
Right. So scrolling, keep the doggy scrolling, divine. No, okay. Anyway, that what she's right about how we encounter everything. This is the problem with the internet. You can actually concentrate on it for a really long time and not remember what you've seen. Which is one problem because it's dreamlike, right? It's like you go from one. Yeah. It is like being in a dream. It's very Finnegan's Wake. Oh my gosh, right? It's like, can you keep track of where it was? Dream. And she says, she points to. She's been reading McLuhan too, so she's on the page with us on that. That McLuhan points out that new technologies do that: enhance, reverse, retrieve. Enhance, obsolesce, reverse, retrieve. And so we go from enhance. He says, I'll calm down, right? This is Harrington. The great 20th century theorist of technology, Marshall McLuhan, proposed a fourfold heuristic for analyzing how a given innovation changes the world. And understand that he also says these innovations happen before the technology appears. So the sort of learning to speed read scrolling like that is anticipating the iPhones.
Oh, wow.
Which I only thought of while we were talking. Yeah. It will enhance some features of our world and obsolesce others. taken to its logical extreme, it will reverse into something else, and it will retrieve older forms. She has parenthetically, she offers a reading of the contraceptive pill based on that heuristic. Harrington's published more on feminism and such, so I hadn't been following her to deal with this stuff. Okay, so she says, it's my contention that digital reading retrieves pattern recognition as a mode of sense making. Yes, she's absolutely right. That's what we've been experiencing. And that, what's interesting, it's like when we research for our poem, all that mattered that I burbled about at the beginning of tonight's episode, we do the research for Draco Alchemicus by surfing the net.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What are we constantly doing?
Yeah.
What did I say kept happening as we were writing right now? We write it and we see it the next day. Pattern.
Yes.
It's like, it's and all of this stuff, Telegram, thank you, Pavel, is a brilliant app for this kind of work, because you can have all the scrolling of all of those different feeds. So you scroll, I see this, I see that, I see this, I collect it, I put it over here. You know, I feel like Diana in Discovery of Witches, right?
Right.
Tie the knots. That's also Deborah Harkness. We were fangirling you too.
Huge.
I've
ruined my life.
Casey is never coming out.
I gotta keep watching. I'm obsessed with its show. Oh my gosh. Kudos.
She was doing the same thing though, because they're both, Harrington and Harkness are both looking at early modern Europe, because I think Harrington did studies of English literature. She references that. And she talks about, you know, like in the Elizabethan era, you do commonplace books because you're collecting all your patterns and putting them in your commonplace book, right? And she has a great insight in saying that, you know, it used to be like cool and magical to find things, to put things that you found in common, and now commonplace, oh, that's trite and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so Harkness has this wonderful image of tying all the knots, right? This also fits, cool. Right? That we are, as we're writing our poems, finding all of these images. Here we need an image of the Whore of Babylon. Here we need an image of a goblet. Here we need an image of a crystal skull. Here we need an image of light. Here we need an image of the screens. Here we need an image of the song. Here we need an image of, you know, incarnation. It's like, okay, that's just telling you what we just wrote. That and it needs to be, so it needs to be also like, oh, I've got this, I don't know where I found these, right? This hand with all of these like links and nets, and, you know, here's the digital, you know, God hand coming down and pulling.
Right. It's the puppet. It's like the puppet master.
All of the threads coming together. And what's interesting is like you scroll, find, collect, scroll. It's like our history bay, Patrick, saying it's all this great spider web that we need music, because it's also music, and it's all, you know.
Yes. Music, it's music and mathematics and light and art and poetry. All
of it constantly coming together.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. It's like magic, right? There's that image.
The net and the tying. And again, in Harkness, in the book, there's things in the books that aren't as well developed in the television show, and things that they can do in the television series that they can't do we've learned this a lot, right? There's things you can do text, and there's things you can do in image, and the two need both.
Yes. Yeah.
Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics is right. Text and image together are a different kind of medium from either one by itself.
Well, right. Think of a manuscript versus an illuminated manuscript, right?
Yes. Yes, that's why I got interested in the comics, because obviously illuminated manuscripts are always playing on this, the visual and the visual of the text versus the visual of the picture versus the oral, the verbal of the text versus the networked all at onceness of a diagram. It all matters. What I loved about what Harrington gets to in this, okay, so she's talking about the commonplace books, and how we don't really think in terms of books in that same way of. She thinks the different revolutions come along, and there's a big consciousness shift, right? She has this very interesting idea that our consciousness shift with the digital comes because the computer chips themselves depend on quantum mechanics. which I had not considered, right? It's like the wave and the particle stuff that Hans has been talking about, and ethers are.
Yeah.
It's like all of it's happening. She said the digital revolution is bringing us closer to comprehending the wave and the particle. That's what he's working on. We'll have Hans back, and he can talk about this, right? That
Yeah.
this and so most of us now scroll, right? And she says, rather than reading long form, which everyone laments, right? Why don't we read books anymore? Please read my book. Here, see, I wrote a big long one, which is in fact about how people used to think in the Middle Ages by putting together all these network of images and songs and everything. And when I wrote this, my colleagues couldn't understand what I was doing. So I'm more avant-garde than they are, right? Because I recognized that in order to understand what it was like to live in the medieval prayer life, you had to be doing this, putting together the chants from the liturgy, the meaning from the different commentaries, the this and the that. How do I show you what that's like? Scroll. By contrast, even though plenty of people still read long form, still greater numbers prefer to scroll. And this very different pattern of information consumption produces radically different ways of thinking. It's usual to be a doomer about this, lamenting post-truth or short attention spans or whatever. But while that's all true, it's not the whole picture. There's much more, and two of these crucial features are a sense of information superabundance and also of aliveness. The experience of seeing the information environment mutate almost in real time. We've experienced that. When we write and we say, we just wrote this and it just happened. We saw it happening. We wrote it. We write it. It happens. I mean, it does feel magical.
Yeah. And it's not always huge things like, predicting the Kentucky Derby. Sometimes it's just small things like a famous personality will do something. We just wrote that. What is going on?
Yeah, because we're using the famous personalities as our influencers in the story, right? And so we pay attention to them to get ideas for what our characters should do. But then sometimes we write it, and then they do it the real person does it the next day. And we said, what did we just do? So
maybe we are witches.
Well, I mean, it's so I have Harkness. Interestingly, I confess I'd read some of Harkness before we started writing, so maybe I was already obsessed with the Elizabethan. To be fair, I did a paper on Queen Elizabeth, my very first book report ever when I was in 4th grade. So, owning it. All of it. See,
I know, I love the Elizabethan. I love Shakespeare. Love.
So nobody gets to own these. I mean, you don't get to own your field in the way that we used to, except for I get to be autistically obsessive about Mary. So back off, ladies. No. Academics are so possessive of our fields.
Really?
Yes. Mine. That's mine. It's very. Tolkien knew what he was doing with Gollum and the Precious. Okay. The aliveness. We're trying to get to the hand of Godness. The aliveness of all of this happening all at once, right? I've lost track of what I was thinking about. The Elizabethan.
Sorry.
No. It all matters. This is all, and it history bays.
Another thread.
The spider webs and stuff.
Right. We make things happen when we write about them.
Yeah.
And yes.
And it's alive and it's coming to life. What was I thinking about?
You were thinking about the Elizabethan.
The Elizabethan.
Right. It's one of the time periods we went back to.
Yeah. Oh golly, I just said the weave. It's interesting. Trump was using that term "weave," right? So that we're doing all this.
I'm trying.
Filament stuff.
When he was doing that, I can't remember if he was doing that first or we were.
Well, I think we were doing it, but he named it. So this is actually a problem of saying the phenomenon is there before people label it. And what I'm seeing in Harrington's piece, this piece that I'm reading now, is she's labeling stuff we've been practicing for years now.
Right. We wrote that we wrote I am the weaver of the web in Act 1. So I'm pretty sure that was one of our lines.
Did we? Well, I mean, so the web, the internet as a web is it's
the spider image though. But yeah, I mean, obviously we didn't invent that, but
we were that was the anapestic trimeters that we were practicing. The arch spider of the interwebs.
Oh, that was the one.
That's an independent piece.
That wasn't Act 1. They're all mixing together now.
Well, they are. They do all fold in. This constant folding inness, the aliveness. I'm still obsessed now with what was I going to say about the Elizabethan period? that witches, right? Why are witches such a concern when they are in the Elizabethan period? And I'm wondering whether it has to do with this media phenomenon, right? Because as I talked about, I've been talking about the Malleus Maleficarum, which I'd read and found out it was about contraception and abortion, which is what Harrington writes about too. That anxiety of women contracepting and aborting is one that is specific to the late 15th, early and 16th centuries, right? We are obviously living right now in a period when that's the big problem. It's the reason that that woman was able to have sex with 101 men in a day, right? Presumably she's on the pill. Either that or she's pregnant now, right?
Yeah, or that, or she just
she aborted it
herself. That happens too,
right? So and Harrington got. This is why we're going to get to this. Harrington had amazing insight about what the OnlyFans practice was, but it's witchcraft of a certain kind, which fits with the Elizabethan period. Is deeply anxious about witches, more so. It's like the great witch hunts that happens in the second of the Discovery of Witches trilogy. Also, well, anyway, Shadow of Night. That they're back there in the 1590s, and that's when the great witch hunts are happening in England. Maybe not the year they land in time, but they're, Diana, the main character, is worried about whether or not they're going to be witch hunts while they're there, and Matthew, her vampire, says no, that's happening in the north, but it's happening in that media environment, just as the contraceptive pill and abortion and everything is happening in ours. These transformations of media time. I haven't. This new theory of the terror of witchcraft comes in.
I'm going to have to read about that, because that really is an interesting topic. You understand how rumors and scares can spread like wildfire. That just happens throughout human history for different topics.
Right.
But why witchcraft, and why then? It's never been fully understood why it happened in New England either.
Right.
People have lots of theories about it, but there's nothing definitive saying it happened because of this.
Well, my new theory is it's the media, the media transformations.
But what about a media transformation? I mean, the more quickly and it would have to be cheaply produced massive amounts of books that were available to people who could afford to buy them and read them. They would be a lot more affordable than had they been handwritten, because those were a lot more expensive. So they were more readily available, I'm assuming. But why would that mean? What kinds of books were being produced? I guess I'm trying to say, why would that mean more paranoia about witchcraft?
Think of it just so this is how historiography works, in the sense that we go through something in our own time, and then we start looking for those evidence of that kind of phenomenon in the past, because you start recognizing these things you never thought about. And we're living through, I've been saying for years, of course, as a medievalist, you do this manuscript to print, right? And we're going now from we went from print to electric in the 19th century, and that caused great disruption of knowledge and feeling of reality. And that's where I'd say all of the stuff about comparative religion and the myth making and the psychology and stuff comes out of the telegraph age. It comes out of the anxiety, and all of the Marian apparitions also come in that period. The Fatima and
You're
Lourdes,
right.
yeah. It's
I was several in France too. And
yep.
Yeah.
Right. So there are these phenomenon of, and this is the sort of mystical problem for McLuhan fans. What? Right? Because every time you try to pin it down, it doesn't work. It's like nailing mist. It's the mist.
You're right. I never thought of that, but it can't be a coincidence. So you have a change in technology, and suddenly you have all these explosion of myths, for good or ill.
Mm-hmm.
Both, right? Like witch hunts are ill, and mystic apparitions of the Mother of God are good.
It's right, but it's still part of it. It's like two sides of the same coin problem. That's why I have that sticker in our telegram of the miraculous metal and the Wheatstone telegraph.
Yeah,
they're like
that's cool.
Completely contemporary. So she's standing there with like beams of light coming out of her rings.
Right, where the shape is like uncanny.
Yeah, and the
right?
shape
so the triangular shape from the head down to the arms, and the rays going down the other way.
Yep.
So that's uncanny. It's pretty cool.
I'd say the kinds of anxieties that people had around Trump and his defect on Twitter and X, right? That that's the where the it like the witchcraft is it's unseen influences. How do you explain them? What is happening? Why do we have all these stories about it's like we don't know what the drones are that are flying around New Jersey. We don't know what's true anymore. We don't know who's real in the videos. We don't know who's talking to whom. We don't know all of that. I think that obviously, I mean, the Elizabethan period has a lot of that same feel. If you one that Elizabeth is basically nuts, right?
Was she?
Yes, she's poisoning herself with her makeup, right?
Okay.
And her
Right,
teeth
that explains some
her
things.
teeth are terrible because she eats too many currants, right? It's like the currants are particularly bad for cavities and her teeth rot.
So, and there was a definite difference between young Elizabeth, her personality, and old Elizabeth, because old Elizabeth, she was monstrous.
I think
Something she
the
did.
white makeup she wears has a bad effect on her.
That makes perfect sense. Lead poisoning,
Yeah.
it causes brain damage. It could probably cause psychosis.
And she's all I mean, there's also it's like we're using the Fairy Queen to write Draco Chemicus as our like structural model, and we practice we never understand what we've just read because who knows what Spencer's talking about. That Elizabeth is bound up in all of this like propaganda and theatrical performance of her role.
Yeah.
All of these things are things, these are persistent human problems, right? As religion is like rulers exerting demonstrating their power, either through military power or performances, right? Of some kind of art and, pageantry and such. I mean, Trump, I meant to mention this earlier that there was Trump on X. He was, I think, preparing for a video interview, and I was looking in the monitor. You could see he was looking at a monitor and saying, like me with my drink here, right? It's like, no, take that table away. No, bring it back. No, take the napkin away. Take that lid off. He was like set dressing.
He's directing.
Yeah. To make sure that the visual that goes out on, and then we got that clip of him doing that. But it's like he's that conscious of the visual layering that he's creating.
Well, he's been working within this medium of television for a very long time. And people think this started with The Apprentice. Oh no. He was doing interviews in the 70s.
Oh yeah.
And in the 80s, and he was very good on camera.
Yeah.
He was very good with the papers. He was very good with getting to know people, influential people, and he's a natural at it.
So in that sense, you just got the royal ability to be in, the center of the court, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I do think that's natural ability. I don't think you can learn that. It's a rare talent.
It certainly makes me think about the people like Louis XIV or Charlemagne who were able to command this kind of energy. Yeah, because not guys just because they're born king don't have it necessarily.
No.
Yeah. Okay, no. So we're back to the weaving that we're putting in all of this, the weaving and stuff. It's alive, right? And so Harrington goes on. When you scroll, you can't possibly encompass everything. So you filter, you browse, you piece things together whimsically. Above all, you notice patterns. Yes, she did it. She described it. And if you do that enough, you start to notice that the patterns themselves are always moving. Anyone who spends meaningful amounts of time online, which is a lot of us, is familiar with the way ideas can take hold, spread virally, and seemingly come to possess the collective consciousness for some period of time. The now common term for such ideas is memes, right? And then she gives some examples of memes. So it's like going back to that. You scroll. You notice patterns. It comes alive. And I'm like, this is what we've been trying to describe in the Mosaic Ark all along, right? It's like we took Mosaic as Moses. It's also the mosaics of the art world, right? It's the Mosaic idea that we got from McLuhan. It's that putting together all of the and it's not, symbol is not exactly what this is. It's why symbols work, but this is the patterns coming alive. And when she has the example of a meme graph, so that, there's sort of all the Wojaks, working at different levels. But if you try to describe what this feels like to be in it to someone who doesn't do it. This was my problem in Marrying the Art of Prayer, right? I'm trying to describe a medieval world that inhabits this kind of pattern recognition.
Yes.
The manuscript world, the chant world of a Bible that has all of the cross references. I'm reading right now for my research Bonaventure's commentary on Luke. It's mainly a list of all of the. He'll take, it's literal in the sense that he's taking the story of Luke, but he's showing the way in which every word in the commentary is pointing to all of these other words in other parts of the scriptures. This big concordance, which didn't exist at the time he was writing, so he just had to know all of this.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a mind.
That's what the 13th century was like. It was pattern, and so when we say digital retrieves the medieval, she goes on to talk about how it's like pre-modern. I'm like, no, it's medieval.
Medieval.
This is what we meant when digital retrieves the medieval. It's that ability to suddenly find these patterns coming alive.
Now, how much of that is related to the medieval mind? How much of that is related to the way they were taught, their education? The trivium or the quadrivium.
So they had memorized everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to. You can see them putting together when they do commentaries or put stuff together. That Thomas Aquinas apparently had this like phenomenal memory, and that he's able to assemble pieces of everything to put it together into his books. Right. That if what I have achieved. Please, academia, listen to me. I know what I'm doing. I'm trying to show you what a medieval thought world looks like. That was my goal in Marrying the Art of Prayer, which I started working on in 2004. I'm 20 years ahead of my time, at least.
You are.
Right?
See, they don't understand it because you have a medieval mind, right?
I've been reading their stuff for a long time, but I realize I'm also, I do the kinds of things that, it's like you put together the patterns. I've been writing poetry since I was in college, probably even before that. I remember writing philosophic poetry in iambic pentameter in college. I had a boyfriend, but anyway. But in
your spare time.
Well, he was in the same class, and he was writing songs, and I was mimicking him. He went on to become a pastor, so there you go. And translate. He's also done a full translation of the entire Vulgate into English. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Not bad.
Not too shabby. Yeah.
I think he was a classics major, but anyway. I haven't thought about him for a while. I have actually been doing this kind of work for a long time, but realizing that it's like to get in their mind to having to practice it. And then now this McLuhan stuff is saying, yes, it's a different mode of knowing. And Harrington is pointing to that, saying it's like, if you're scrolling all the time and doing this pattern recognition and finding the patterns coming alive and the spider web's going in all directions and it all comes alive, it's exhilarating. Isn't it?
Yes, it is. I was just thinking of something only slightly related. If you want to remember something, you have to get a physical piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and write it down that way, because it's a different function of your brain. So I think the scrolling does something similar. Right. It's actually a physical activity between your hands and your eyes that allows you to maybe see these connections quicker. And that's why, because when you're scrolling, yes, you can have a short attention span, but also you could just be filtering out the stuff that your subconscious doesn't need. It's already established a pattern in there. It just hasn't worked its way around to the front of your brain yet. But eventually it does click, and you're like, oh, okay, that's why I've just looked at this. You can follow so many different threads. But you can actually come up, learning something unique by doing this.
By the scrolling.
Making any sense. by the scrolling.
You
Yeah.
have, yes, you have actually. I'm trying to find her next thing so that I can talk about it, which I can't remember where I put. Speaking of not being able to find the things that you
So
want to
about 30
retrieve.
years about 30 years ago, I was having a discussion with somebody about whether or not you could believe something you read. And oh, how do I know that's true? I said, well, didn't it come with references? He says, whoever goes to the index and looks at references, I'm like, well, why wouldn't you? Otherwise, you wouldn't know it was accurate, you know. And his point was that nobody's going to do that. Now, the thing about the internet is it's very easy to do that.
Oh, but people
It
still
was
don't.
hard to,
No. So
yeah, they
what
don't,
you were
but they
just
can.
saying that okay, one, the looking for references. Yes, I mean obviously that's why I became a scholar because the footnote. Oh my gosh, you can go
Yeah.
to a footnote and find more footnotes, right?
Yeah.
The footnotes talk to each other.
It's a treasure. Yeah, it's a treasure hunt.
The great treasure
Yeah.
hunt. Yes. So I think, and this is I think here is an argument for you can use the internet well or badly, right? Just like you can
Yes.
use a book well or badly, whether or not
Yeah, you can scroll through a bookstore or a library and just pick something off the shelf, look at it for 2 seconds, put it down, and just keep doing that. You can do the same thing on the internet, or you can stop, sit, and read.
right.
It's a giant library. So
But what you were saying just now about writing things down, yes, the other thing I do is handwrite notes. And I have my leather books that I was showing off previous episode. I can't remember now. That I hand all of the sort of putting to. I do type notes in some context, but I also have always had handwritten notebooks. That I'm either keeping a diary, which I did when I was younger, or it's artist's way doing free writing, which I did for a decade or so, or now I always have a leather notebook, which they get nicer and nicer as I get older because I can afford it. Keeping notes of things that I'm brainstorming and stuff like that. And I think what you're describing is you need some kind of physical engagement with the stuff, or you don't remember it. And certainly medieval bookmaking. I mean, the guys writing the books, the professional scribes writing the books, were not necessarily the authors. I mean, publication was separate from composition as it is for us now. But that physical engagement with the tools does matter. The what you're saying there actually makes a lot of difference. But not everybody, I mean, it's like, okay, so I send out newsletters and put Substacks up, and it's like, I can tell from the newsletters we send out in DCR how many people click the links. What do you think the click the link percentage is in a newsletter?
I think it's pretty low, probably.
High is 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 to 3% is standard, right?
And why do you think that is?
People don't go for the links, right? They don't. I don't necessarily, right? It's like I put in all these references in all of my, Finney Barrett Prayer is ridiculously well referenced, particularly the stuff on Milo, right? Because I'm like saying, you're going to know, I'm watching all these patterns flow past me. I'm going to make sure that they're all linked and everything. And I know everything about Milo, at least for 3 years. And it's all linked. People don't follow the links. What?
I'm one of the 5%. I can't not follow a link, especially if it's a really, really good article. And it injects, like John Carter did this when I was reading his Re-Enchanting the World article, which was really long and had a bunch of links in it. But the stuff was so interesting, I couldn't not click on it. It's like, don't go into that room over there, that big golden door. Just leave it alone. Just pay attention to this one. Are you kidding me? I'm going to go over there right now. That's the way I look at it. But I guess I realize I'm different that way.
That's why you've hung out with me for the last 4 years writing poetry, right?
Probably.
And no, the thing is, what we're doing. So I've been thinking today with this scrolling meditation and such about, how significant learn to scan is.
Yeah.
Right. Learn to scan. It means learn. I mean, it's like this. Learn to it's like never mind Matrix and watching all of the the bits go by. We're watching all of it flow past, and also poetry writing is very slow.
It's methodical.
It took us 2 days 2 days to write the most recent stanza because we kept having to fiddle with it, right? And
Yeah, I'm not sure we're done.
yes, we are. Worm and arm rhyme.
Okay.
We have these great fights in our writing group. It's like, that rhymes. No, it doesn't. It should be a or the. I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, wait a minute. I'll demonstrate for our audience. Say fire.
How many syllables does fire have? Five
Fire,
at least.
fire.
Fire.
Or is it fire?
Fire. Different dialects, different. It's like we're all writing in English, right? And we can't agree on how many syllables there
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
There was one stevedore, right? You won that one because I'm like, it's stevedore,
Yeah.
isn't it? And you're like, no.
Well, it's like, think about it like this, like the whiskey, Jameson. It's spelled Jameson. Nobody pronounces it like that. It's Jameson. It's not stevedore. It's stevedore.
It says you, but so said the dictionary. So you won.
So said my uncles who used to have that job. My grandfather's brothers.
Right. So there on the one hand, there's this flowingness of going through all of the patterns and everything. And on the other hand, I'm not sure we're going to be able to get, no, we only have 20 minutes left. So to be continued, but we'll get through the hard part in a few minutes. That if you want to re-enchant the world, you need to learn to scan. And I think from my perspective, it means both this being okay with being out there in the midst of all these patterns. You do have to actually learn to scan and pay attention, right? It's like looking for, I have, how many 100,000 pictures on my iPad, right? It's hilarious. You have to be looking constantly, find the pattern, find the association, find the link, be able to do the concordance on all of this, right? And then with I'm even more convinced after my Harrington reading today and thinking about this, how important poetry is, because poetry is the structure making of this scanning practice. It's the scrolling. Poetry is what gives life to the patterns.
Yeah, that's how you make sense of them.
Right. The patterns have life on their own. But the poetry is a response to that. That's what it is. The poetry is response to all of those patterns. And that, the pre-modern world, they wrote poetry. Guys, if you want to re-enchant the world, learn to scan. It will also save you from OnlyFans. Because here we have the egregor. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, all these eyes. Excuse me. So
is that creepy one?
Yeah, I don't know where she got it. She doesn't credit her pictures any more than I do.
Oh, God, this is nightmare fuel.
This is nightmare fuel, right?
Oh,
and she says,
yeah.
This is yesterday's Lily Phillips. That's her name, the OnlyFans woman. Lily Phillips in the spreadsheet egregor, and Harrington's subtitle is "There's more than one way of being possessed." Okay. Now this I thought was incredibly insightful. You guys, you can read this one because it's free. You have to subscribe to the other ones I was talking about. Mary Harrington, go subscribe to her. This one, she was pointing out, okay, so people are looking at the sex act as the primary thing, but she said, she backed up a bit, and I thought this was very interesting. She said, what Phillips seems most distressed about in the documentary wasn't the gangbang as such. It was firstly the dynamic of internet audience capture. She described in her interview how once she'd promised the event to her OnlyFans followers, she had to go through with it.
Or what?
As she spoke about this, her voice caught as though experiencing that sense of compulsion all over again. Quote, when you've promised something to people who support you, it's kind of hard to, her voice breaks a little, let them down. The meditation is on this, what she's possessed by. Like, what is the possession? Is it like the sex addiction? No, because she doesn't even remember it, right?
But that is a sex addiction. It's compulsive.
But what's the compulsion, right? Where's the compulsion coming from? She is possessed, but what's she possessed by? Now, demon is legion, so there you go. That's why we have this nightmare fuel image.
Yeah.
Right? But there's this, like, when you looking into the abyss looks back. Looking into the internet. What drives people nuts on the internet?
What drives people nuts on the internet?
Likes.
The comment section.
Well, but the likes. How many followers do I have? How many followers do I have? How many followers do I have? How many, like, you, and Harrington goes, anyone who spends, she talks about the audience capture. She says more woo-woo term for complete audience capture. She said that you're working for your audience, right? We got, hi guys, right? All of this is fed by how big your audience is, right? Are you anybody? Oh, it's how big your audience is. How many followers do you have on Twitter? How many followers do you have on Facebook? How many views do you have on this video? And that I think Harrington's right in the sense of the sort of feeling of the audience itself is that nightmare fuel thing, right? All of those eyes looking at you, all of those eyes, which to a certain extent, since we can't see how many people are actually watching us, is imaginary.
Yeah. Right. So what is she imagining?
Or that it's actually real because we are actually being, or if it's robotic, right? If you become robotic, clearly all your fans are robots. We clearly only have human fans because
The bots leave us alone.
I don't know. Stay away from us, bots, right? The bots are watching. You feel like you have a lot of attention. She says, there's this sort of composite awareness in this multiplicity, and it can have some kind of agency. Have you heard of this concept of the egregor? Maybe that's where this is different, or you're missing. You don't know what that is?
No.
Okay. So I first heard about it in a interview that Jonathan Pajot did with the guys on Lord of Spirits. I forget what their names are. Sorry, guys. I remember Lord of Spirits. And they were talking about, and I was listening to it while I was watching a screensaver of all these drone videos going over cities a lot. Right. It was wild. Right. So the city is an entity, right? There's a kind of sense that, like in antiquity, you have the genius of the city. We've talked about that, right?
Yeah.
So the genius of, Rome is Roma. The genius of Athens is Athena. The genius of Jerusalem is Zion. I mean, it's a standard ancient phenomenon. And they have that feeling that the city itself has a personality, a reality.
Okay.
And this occult term is egregor, right? But spirit, genius.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. The spirit of the city.
The spirit of the city. Right. So you can say, and I can say, like when the fires in the Texas Panhandle happened last February, the city screamed, right? It was 3,000, it's a small town where my ancestors were some of the original pioneers, my great grandmother.
Yeah.
I was worried about the people, but there were a few people that got caught in the fire outside of my son and my grandparents' town. But what I felt was the city being in terror, not the people, the city itself, right? Like there's this reality to the collection. This is
it's like that song, The Night Chicago Died.
Yes.
Chicago's a city, right?
Yes.
It's like, the city died that night, right?
Right.
It's like, how could a city die? It's just a collection of buildings. But
there's something more to it.
There's something more to it. There is. It's some people call it an energy.
Right.
But it's even more than that. I think you're right. If a city's gone, you still miss it, right? You still notice its absence. Carthage is no more.
Yes, but Carthage still exists. Yes, there's something.
Yeah.
Terry Pratchett has this sort of the gods or things of phenomena of belief, right? And they're little ones that trapped out in the desert that don't have enough believers.
What happens to the angel of a city that doesn't exist anymore?
Indeed, exactly.
Yeah.
And
homeless angels everywhere.
That just gave me this angel of I just had a really strong pattern moment of something. No, I don't remember what I was remembering. That's why it's like our cities are the entities, and they're suffering right now. You can feel them suffering, and you can also. It's like it took me a long time to fall in love with Chicago. I fell in love with New York the minute I stepped off the plane. right? It was
Oh.
like very interesting. I loved the city immediately I got there.
Mm.
Los Angeles is working on me. I've been out there enough in the last year, and I'm starting to hear her, right? And it's like it's a real
Mm.
thing, right? It's like I know the
Yes, it
city.
is.
The city wants to be loved. Los Angeles wants to be
Mhm.
loved. She's drowning in um, you know, garbage and sorrow
Yes.
right now. But the city itself is lovable.
Hmm.
Okay, so Harrington is hypothesizing that this egregor phenomenon, the smaller version of it is all of the attention that people give to us in our audiences.
Mm.
And the possession that Lily Phillips had was that her demon, Legion, possessed her to do that 101 guys.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the community, my community, on my online
My
community,
online
right?
community, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and that she talks about, it's like, why would you get attached to by one of these possessions? And it possibly is the trauma of her first sexual experience, but that here we said, um, yeah, so which is many of those now exploring such ideas are ambivalent on the ontology of these non-material realities, the egregores, right? Do they actually exist? But perhaps if we want to be able to make sense of our moral intuitions concerning a phenomenon such as Lily Phillips, we should consider not reinventing the wheel, bluntly. I want to consider the possibility that Phillips' stunt is more intelligible, understood not in terms of liberal feminism, right? Have as much sex as you want because you're the same as a guy, or the sexual revolution or whatever, but as an instance of what we might describe as egregoric capture, and the medievals would have called demonic possession. It's not just the
Yeah.
indescribable look in Philip's eyes in the aftermath of the stunt. The signposts are subtle, but I don't think I'm imagining the possibility. The documentary maker Josh Peters hasn't ruled out the possibility either, not least in the clip he posts from an interview another OnlyFans creator, Alex Letizier, who describes the slippery slope of extreme content as, quote, like doing a deal with the devil.
Oh, because it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing being that the egregores are intensely legalistic, which is another layer of this phenomenon. They require your consent, and
Yeah.
they claim every legal right they were given through your
That's a demon.
consent. Yeah, they're the demon.
That's a demon.
Right.
Yeah. And every city has a guardian angel, but it also has a demon that sits over it, according to people who study angels. Angels.
Well,
and
this is
demons.
okay. So we'll take the here's an angel. It's pink. Which is
It's just scary. That is so wrong.
it's a Christmas tree topper. Come on. And it's very pretty. It's all pretty. It's got, it's like it's the biblically correct angel with the 6 wings and all covered with eyes.
I really hope not. I hope that was a bad interpretation somewhere.
Well, my sort of materialistic interpretation is the covered with eyes or winky studs on the chariot wheels. But anyway, I know the thing is I think
I like that one better.
well, yeah, but the thing is I think they are actually, it's hard to know because like there is the story of the peacock Argus being covered with eyes, right?
Oh,
And it has eyes.
Right.
This egregor phenomenon is like, yeah, it's like you have made a deal to get attention. And this is where she's saying that Phillips is in fact feeding that deal, right? The demons that she's made a deal with the devil. It's like, yeah, I make this deal with you for attention. And the demon says, great, lots of attention. Yeah. Now you have to do this.
Right.
Right.
And the likes are approval.
Yeah. Right. And that it's even more than just the like addiction of dopamine hits. It's this spiritual reality of
She's
the egregor.
Yeah. It's just her identity is wrapped up in it.
She's saying something bigger than identity, right? It's the she's actually trapped by this deal that she's made.
Yeah. Yeah, she needs help for sure. She needs spiritual help.
Okay, and now there's the big kicker. Here we got another biblically correct angel, right? This one's from that movie, the video. That in fact, now we've got the manuscript seraphim. What?
I didn't think that could be less scary than that.
I don't know. They're all pretty scary.
They are, but some are more scary than others. Yeah, that's a moving one. That's a video. You've seen it, right?
Right. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
the movie. I've moved on from the movie one. The interesting thing that I found Harrington talking about, and that I'm completely in sympathy with, is the oh, Ephesians Brown, Lord of Spirits podcast is Andrew Stephen Damick and Stephen DeYoung. Thank you. Thank you. Let me see if there's something else, any more information that they've given me. Okay. Hi, Felix and Daydreamer. Okay, Daydreamer says fire, 3 syllables. Fire is 4 syllables. Some people think fire can have even 5, right? So
it's 1 syllable, far.
Fire.
Far.
Fire. What I like what Harrington suggests, and but maybe we'll have to suggest and then promise to come back to, which we hope we got Daydreamer to hold our feet to the fire and tell us what we've forgotten that we said we were going to talk about. That the scrolling and the pattern recognition, on the one hand, I mean, it is bringing us, the sort of being online is putting us in this dangerous, I'll go back to the angel-eyed guy, angel character, is putting us in this dangerous situation that we can be attached to spiritual entities that in the past were considered obviously actually real, right?
Yeah.
The angel, the biblically correct angels are biblically correct for a reason, because you expect, these are the ones that are described in the scriptures. Well, I've got that book over there, reminding us that at some point in the past, these were considered real entities, which Joseph Campbell in his God-written monomyth would suggest are psychological entities, but they are psychological in the sense that they can interact with us spiritually. And what's our mind, right? Yes. There was another layer that Harrington was talking about. There was also the degree to which this I cannot unpack right now. We're going to do is, so guys, in the next 2 weeks, it's like Christmas break and I'm traveling around and I'll be at my mom's. So probably we can try to stream from my mom's basement. We don't know what day yet. To be continued, ... there's a difference between knowing something, and this is again in some of Harrington's stuff, knowing something, cognition, and recognizing something because you've seen it before, recognition. And that most medieval, I would say medieval, she would say pre-modern, most medieval thinking is recognition. It's recognizing things you've seen, which is a lot of what I've had to do in my scholarship, learn to realize that they're citing stuff they just know because they've heard it a gazillion times in the liturgy, or they've seen that text, and they're not discovering new knowledge, they're recognizing the patterns, right? So the pre-modern way of knowing is recognition. Whereas the modern way of knowing is cognition, which is cogito ergo sum, breaking things down into their parts and knowing them because you've been able to disassemble them, which is why, this is me, not her, why I think people then tend to think robots can be human. Right? Oh, you got all the pieces of a human being, so therefore it is. And
got the soul.
And what's a soul, right? This is the huge questions. Yeah. Like, what are these spiritual realities? For Campbell in the early 20th century, they were all convinced that they were simply psychological effects. Right. But they have, I don't see that Campbell in his hero's journey has any sense of it as having a spiritual reality. Yeah. I think it has, yes, that's actually the fairest thing I've said. It's not a spiritual reality because he doesn't think those exist. He thinks it's a psychological cope.
Right. Or at least he was hoping it was. By the sounds of
Well,
it, by the way he wrote.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Cope was his hope. Right.
Cope was his hope. You're a poet.
I am.
So yeah, so there's that one sense, that cognition layer that says, and again, I'm realizing I could explain this more. We're going to have to come back to this because it's worth unpacking deeply. Knowing something because you've been able to take it apart and see all its parts is modernity. Start there. Recognition, seeing it and recognizing it because you found the patterns, is the pre-modern. And one of the things that happens in that recognition mode, the scrolling and the patterns, is these spiritual realities become accessible again.
Right. You start to notice them.
And not just notice them, you start to believe they're real. Mm-hmm. This is fabulous, right? On Harrington's part. It's like we say, learn to scan, and there's poetry, and how do you re-enchant the world? We're doing it already. You do it by scrolling and finding the patterns, and then you start knowing that those egregores are actually real. The spiritual realities are real. The patterns are real. The patterns are pointing to reality.
Right.
And that's why it was so dangerous for Phillips to make it that bargain that she did for attention with the demon.
Mm-hmm.
Caravaggio says, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Seem to have froze.
I froze or you froze?
I froze.
You froze. Oh no.
Froze. At least don't have a goofy look on my face. I look pensive.
You look okay. So you've frozen looking pensive, and we are now frozen in time at the end of our stream, right? With the thought that we need to be continued, think about what it means to accept that the patterns point to reality.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to unhumiliate you and rather than making.
I look worse on a frozen screen.
No, you
it's
actually
okay.
look good, but I can still hear you, so I know that's okay. So we have Mel has been happily. I think we'll just make Mel guides the chat is what they're doing happening here. Say Joyce gets the liturgy. He does. Mel says begin again. Yes, we have to begin again constantly. Felix Ruber, Noel ete timere. I'm not sure what you're responding to there.
I think he's saying Merry Christmas.
I think so.
Well.
Oh, the Daydreamer figured out how to say fire in 5 syllables. Fire. And Mel is concurring that not voicing opposition is a complicit yes. Be not afraid to say no. Very good. Yes, Felix, right. Rewrite until it's right. We're discovering the new mnemonics. You're good at this. Very good. Okay, so that you've been feeling that both on the one hand we're in danger is right, because we don't know what's out there, although we do because we know that they're biblically correct angels and some of them are fallen. That we are here in the Mosaic Ark sailing through all of these oceans and waters, and we're on the right path because we're in the Ark. That we're happy to have. It's starting to be confirmed over and over again. And that somehow, interestingly, the digital practice of engaging is recovering something that is very much alive. That's a wonderful thought to be having in Advent. Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so thank you guys for joining us. We will be back. We promise to try sometime over the Christmas break. We know we've agreed to do a New Year's Eve stream on the Tuesday, so you can find us then. But we'll be back in between times and watch all of my social media for all of the advertisements that I put out. Nobody ever clicks them, but there you go. Click. They don't. When
No.
I mean, it's like, no, this is the problem. Everybody stays completely within platform, right? So Substack gives me lots of reads from Substack, but it doesn't come from anywhere else, even though I put ads up everywhere. And Substack very kindly gives you, like, what do they call it? Assets, right? To do little pictures so that you can link people to their posts that nobody comes from any outside platform to get to. Stop, guys, mini mansions are fine, but like, go visit. Right?
Yes. Visit your neighbors.
Visit your neighbors on the other platforms. All right, this is great. I'm glad we were able to do this because I think this will help a lot once we get to what Rob has been doing in his amazing time travel books and robots and stuff, because he's dealt with all of this stuff on a very fun level. But he's coming in January, and we'll obviously announce that. But
That'll be fun.
we will see you next time on the Mosaic Arc. Thanks for joining us.